What's up everybody, Kilo here with a patch review. Mordhau patch 19 has finally been released and I want to give you guys my first impressions of all the changes as well as freshly added features. First and foremost, Mordhau has gotten a new game mode, namely a ranked 3v3 teamfight game mode. PvP games with high skill ceilings like Mordhau absolutely need a skill-based matchmaking system. Primarily, not to scare away all the new and casual players that otherwise get burned out by constantly fighting against players that have a way higher skill level than them. It is also no coincidence that most popular online PvP games are small-scale team games. The teams in these games are for the most part small enough to consider yourself a sizable part of it and feel your impact, and big enough to make your losses less personal and a bit easier to devour. Mordhau is a very close and personal game, and for a broad casual player base, losing these 1v1 rank duels is too harsh and painful. There's no one to blame except oneself. So as a coping strategy, people blame the game, which leads to a bad perception of the game in general, or people stop trying at all and everyone runs around as a naked screaming mallman. A team game mode gives players someone to share their victories with, and someone to blame the losses on. The possibility to play with people that are within one's skill level is a great addition to the game that in my opinion should have been available since release. But I guess better later than never. The new rank team mode comes with two new maps, Truce and Arena, which you can see here in the background. The ranked server stick rate got upgraded from 60 to 120. Beside ranked 3v3, there is also an 8v8 teamfight playlist, now available via matchmaking. Patch 19 has added a new weapon to the game, the Falx. The Falx is an 18-point weapon with very high strike damage. Most comparable to the Battle Axe, the Falx two-shots heavy armor opponents with one head strike and one body strike. It does extremely high damage to light armored opponents and has good stamina values. With 105 cm, its length is on par with the Longsword. However, it is considerably slower than those Messers and Longswords. The content update also brought 6 new perks to choose from. Mule gives you an additional inventory slot, which can only be used to pick up equipment. Butcher increases melee damage to horses by 50%. This is the only nerf to horses in this patch, by the way, which is a bit disappointing to me, since I find horses insanely annoying to play against. Stun makes you disable your enemy on disarm. This perk is not terribly useful at first glance, since the stun duration is pretty short, and a disarm without stun almost always grants a free hit on your enemy anyway. Supplied reduces the ammo box resupply cooldown by 1/3. The Dwarf perk makes your player model smaller. In exchange you're slower and take more damage. I can already tell that this perk is gonna be people's new favorite toy, and we're going to see a lot of small men running around in the battlegrounds. In contrary to the Dwarf perk, you can also play as a tank. Tanks have a bigger player model, move at a fixed speed no matter the armor, have stricter turn cap, and take less damage. With that out of the way, let's talk about balance changes. An animation smoothing effect has been implemented, which reduces spinning and spazzing. Although this has never really been a problem in high-level play, this spin reductor certainly makes movement look more realistic. Also for non-high-level players, which is obviously the majority of the player base, certain attacks, when paired with body movement, might have become more readable with this change, or at least less frustrating and annoying to play against. Implemented back parry reduction reduces parry from the back and makes hitting backs and sides easier. I think they changed this so you don't accidentally parry someone that is behind you. The side effect is a slight nerf to 1vx, because now it should be harder to defend when being surrounded by multiple enemies. But honestly, I don't think it will have much of an impact. The Parry Window is now again as big as it was in patch 17, specifically 15 milliseconds longer than in patch 18. Even though this value seems to be very small, I didn't like the parry nerfs from patch 18. They only shortened it to nerf chamber feint to parries, which didn't work out at all. Improved stab animations and values to be more readable and less instant. This sentence is music to my ears. Unreadable, one-frame stab animations have been one of Mordhau's biggest combat flaws that plagued this game since release. Here's a comparison between the old stab animations and the new ones. At first glance, I think the new animations have improved the readability quite a bit. The part where the sword starts moving forward is better recognizable, but you decide for yourself. Lunge reduced globally and is now the same for all weapons. This is another huge change. Lunge, for those who don't know, is the movement boost you get once your weapon enters the release phase. Short weapons always had more lunge than long weapons, so this should nerf all weapons that are shorter than a longsword quite substantially. The main problem with lunge was that in teamfights you could easily parry one opponent and then lunge away from this opponent and hit someone else, making the overall pace of fights very floaty. To compensate for this reduced forward momentum during attacks, global knockback got reduced by 5%, which basically means you don't get knocked back as far as before the patch when parrying an attack. Global movement speed got reduced by 3%. This also tries to make movement in teamfights more grounded. On paper, these three movement changes look good to me. We'll have to see how they play out though. The maximum angle for underhands got reduced by 12 degrees. I'm not exactly sure why they changed that, but these extreme underhands often cost glancing blows, which is probably not really something the developers wanted to keep in the game. The miss detector range got increased. The miss detector got implemented in patch 18 to nerf intentional misses to bait out parries in 1vx scenarios. With this update, I think the minimum range to trigger the detector between the missed swing and the player model got increased. If the detector gets triggered, the parry cooldown of the missed player gets greatly reduced, which intends to heavily buff 1vx. Hitting the floor and walls now costs half the stamina of a normal miss. This means you can't miss and crouch hit the floor to prevent stamina loss anymore. A decent change in my opinion, although I was hoping for a more severe nerf to missed swings in general. Kicks out of shield wall no longer overpower normal kicks. Shields got changed a lot this patch, so I don't want to judge this nerf separately from all the other shield changes. Riposte chambers have been removed. This means that your riposte can't chamber an incoming attack from a third player anymore. Riposte chambers were pretty rare, so no big changes here. Two ripostes also can't clash anymore with each other, which was even less common than a riposte chamber. Nobles no longer hit stop on teammates. A pretty solid change in my opinion, considering that they are often surrounded by a lot of teammates and have very hard hitting weapons. The crouch got slowed down by 50 ms. Crouch has gotten nerf after nerf and it feels in a decent spot right now. Not completely useless and not a cheesy iframe that it was a few patches ago. They also added a slight cooldown to it, to prevent spam and macros. Another 1vx buff brings the parry into parry change. For those who don't know, if you successfully parry an attack, your parry gets off cooldown and you can immediately perform another parry. If there is not too much time between those two parries, you gain stamina for the second one instead of losing stamina. As a concluding remark on these balance changes, I wanna say that I'm a bit disappointed that we didn't get a chamber feint to parry nerf this patch. I heard some rumors that it will make it into the live build, but I guess it wasn't ready. I also was hoping for a nerf to stamina regen and a fix for some glancing blows that shouldn't happen. But beside that, the changes are pretty good and healthy for the game in my opinion. The next block of changes are weapon changes. Besides some outliers, the weapon balance wasn't so bad to begin with, so there are less changes than some might have expected. The firebot duration got slightly nerfed from 10 to 8 seconds. The structure damage was therefore increased to compensate. The Zweihander got slightly buffed. It can now two-shot with 2 head strikes, and it deals more damage against light armor. The weapon also became 3 points cheaper, which makes builds more flexible. The Evening Star alt grip got its stab release shortened, a change that aims to fix extreme stab drags that were possible prior to this nerf. Honestly, I'm surprised that the Evening Star main mode didn't get any nerfs at all. It already was one of the strongest weapons in the game, and with other top tier weapons being nerfed, it became even stronger. One of my favorite weapons, the War Axe, got buffed. A 5 cm range increase seems minor, but range is pretty much the only thing this weapon lacks. The War Axe can now also be thrown. The S-Stock, pre-patch probably the best teamfighting weapon in the game, got nerfed quite a bit. Slower strikes, less stab release, and a more strict stab turn cap should tone down an otherwise OP weapon. The Greatsword also got a stricter stab turn cap to prevent stab drags and extreme stab switches. One-handed weapons got hit really hard this patch. More readable stab animations, less slunge, and with this change also reduced stamina drain. And even though I like to see weapon variety, I think toning down these stronger one-handers is healthy for the game. Longsword nerfs were probably the most anticipated and requested weapon changes, and here they are. Strike windups are now 25 ms slower. On top of that, the Longsword got its strike turn cap reduced, which further hurts its drag axle mix-ups. These two direct nerfs, in combination with the lunge reduction and the stab animation improvements, probably hurt this former S-tier weapon quite a bit. The Messer, the Poleaxe alt grip and the Cleaver also got its axles nerfed, which is a step away from the heavy axle meta we had in patch 18. And finally, after enough complaints, the Messer got its phantom range fixed, which probably means slightly adjusted hurt tracers, so basically a bit shorter in range. The Polehammer is, beside the Zweihander, the only weapon that got direct buffs this patch. More range, more damage, faster strikes, less miss recovery and 3 points cheaper. And even though wielding a Polehammer gives you an even bigger movement speed penalty than before, the weapon undoubtedly has become stronger this patch. That brings us to the shield changes. Since the release of Mordhau, shield balance has been a highly controversial topic within the community. Most seasoned players don't want to rely on tedious outstumming battles against shield users. A lot of casual players, on the other hand, want them to be strong, to be able to stay alive longer in fights against more skilled opponents. With patch 19, the following things have changed. The shield wall, this is the mode you get into when you hold R, lets you move faster than before. Blocking an attack with shield wall now costs as much stamina as a normal parry, which is significantly more than before. But if multiple opponents hit your shield wall, the parry into parry mechanic can now get triggered, which lets you gain stamina. Beside that, all held shields got their parry windows nerfed. The round shield now has the longest parry window, but has the heavy movement speed debuff and the worst stamina game out of the 3 held shields. The Kite Shield has the second most parry frames, gives you the medium movement speed debuff and has good stamina game. The Heater Shield has now the best stamina game out of the 3 held shields, and no movement speed debuff, but it doesn't give extra parry frames anymore. So rather than having one objectively best shield for any circumstance, which was the round shield before the patch, the 3 shields now have different trade-offs. Honestly, it is not easy to find a good middle ground for shields, between useless and completely overpowered. This probably hasn't been the last time they have changed. Last but not least, I wanna mention a few other notable changes. Spy builds for frontline and invasion have been fixed for the most part, since emblems are now forced to have the same color as the team color. One thing that has almost driven me into insanity is the way Mordhau handles mod integration. I don't know how often I have deleted this mod.io folder and re-downloaded everything just to get stuck at this preparing to download mod screen again 2 days later. This honestly made me not want to play on certain servers, and I really hope this patch fixes it now. Another thing I'm super passionate about is the server browser and how they improved it. Even though it is a very basic feature, I'm thrilled to see that you can now mark various servers as favorites and sort the list by different parameters. Alright guys, that was my first impressions for the newly released patchy. The video got quite a bit longer than initially planned. I hope you all have fun with the new modes and changes. Please leave a like and consider subscribing to this channel if you want to see more Mordhau content in the future. As always, thank you all for watching and see you soon.